Hi, I'm Brian Spencer, the minister from the Waranga Uniting Churches, which covers the little country towns in northern Victoria of Colbinavan, Rushworth, Murchison and Tatura. And the following sermon was part of our network service from the 6th of August. It's streamed from Murchison, goes out via Zoom to our other congregations and to folk at home. The miracle of sharing invites us to consider how we need to act compassionately and with faith when the task before us looks insurmountable. Our gospel reading this week is from Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 to 21, and it's the feeding of the 5,000. It's a challenging scene. 5,000 men, plus of course the women and children, have gathered to listen to Jesus preach and to heal their sick. It's an isolated spot not far from the Sea of Galilee. Jesus and his disciples were trying to take some time off to rest, but when Jesus saw the people, we read, he had compassion for them and cured their sick. Late in the day, the disciples, weary and hungry, made a recommendation to the teacher: send the crowds away so they can buy food in the nearby farms and villages. But Jesus had another plan. They need not go away, he said. You give them something to eat. Whether we read this story as a story of Jesus' grace inspiring the crowd to share with each other, following the examples of the disciples after they started to share their own food, or if Jesus literally multiplied what was given through divine powers, the result is the same. God's grace, when mixed with human activity, is more than enough. But both grace and human activity are necessary. The story of the 5 loaves and 2 fish still speaks to our day. We are called to continue to do what we can in the face of seemingly insurmountable problems and seek God's blessing on our efforts. For it is in such acts that the miracles can happen. I hope the sermon that follows is useful. Please feel free to use it however you would like. You'll find in the comments links to a Word document and also to the PowerPoint, which you could use if you need to for your worship. Thank you. Feeding of 5,000 is one of the few stories that's actually recorded in all 4 Gospels. There are many stories that only appear in 1 or 2 and whatever, because the writers chose their memories of Jesus and the stories of Jesus according to what they felt the needs of the early church when they wrote were in their audience. But the fact that this is in all 4 Gospels says it's a very important story for the early church. The miracle itself is opaque. Is it a miracle of multiplication of fish and loaves, or is it a multiplication of generosity and trust that we share the little that we've got, hoping it's enough? But it's a fairly detailed methodology around the miracle, how it happens, and I want to explore that this morning. It happens after we've been through the last few weeks a whole series of parables. We've been listening to parables of the sower, the weeds and the wheat, the yeast and the mustard seed. The last 2, the mustard seed and the yeast, so it's about the story of the little tiny seed that when sown grows big and provides a home for many others. And then the parable of the yeast that is mixed and seems to be lost. It just gets lost in the lump, and yet it transforms the whole lot. And at the end of this cycle, Jesus actually asked his disciples, do you get it? Do you now understand what this kingdom of God's about? And they, in their inimitable style, answer, yes. Yes, that's the right answer, yes. But did they really get it? Because as this story of the feeding of the 5,000 unfolds, it's clear that they didn't quite get the story that, small is enough or that a little is enough. And so we read the story that Jesus gets in a boat. He had full-on time teaching, healing, looking after everyone else. In between this, there's a little story that he's actually heard that his cousin, his close cousin, John the Baptist, has been killed by Herod the governor. A pretty grisly death. He's been beheaded. And news of that gets to Jesus. And you can understand that when that happens, you're tired physically from all this teaching and healing and ministry, and then this shock of someone very close to him being murdered. He wants to get away. So they hop in the boat. And I suppose people must have known the area, and you see someone head off in a boat and you think, I know where they're heading. There'll be a little cove or a little landing place over there or something or other. And so the people go around the shorelines and find him. So despite him getting away, trying to get a break, when he gets ashore, suddenly the crowd's there again. And we read, he had compassion for them and cured their sick. This story starts with compassion. It's driven by compassion. Paul was to say in that lovely letter in Corinthians about the love, though I have the power to do miracles and power to do this and whatever else, if I have no love, I'm nothing. And yes, Jesus could do miracles. He could teach, he could preach, but he loved the people and responded. So it's driven by compassion. But then, so he teaches and heals again. And then the disciples come and say to him, it's a deserted place for him. The hour's now late. Send them away that they can get food for themselves. And Jesus said to them, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. And that's the second part of any story of where we have to cope with something big. Apart from being driven by compassion, we have to actually accept that it is our problem. We can't say it's not my problem. We need to accept responsibility for it. And there's many big things in our lives that we'd like to step away from and say, not my problem. That's someone else's problem to solve. It's too big for us. And we're facing it every day. We talk of whether it's the housing crisis or global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it, or just the big issues of our community. They're big issues and they don't go away easily. But unless we actually say, it is my problem, then we can sidestep it all. So the disciples can't. Jesus says they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. And they reply, we've got nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. One of the first things that whenever we look at doing something, I suppose it's very part of a lot of human nature is we look at what we haven't got. We haven't got much. We haven't got much. They call it deficit thinking. If we've got deficit thinking, it's what do we lack? We lack young people. If only we had more young people in the church. If only we had more whatever in the town, whatever it is. We know what we lack. We need more industry. We need more whatever. And we know what we haven't got. And if you've been through the place-based planning thing that councils often doing around the Camp Haspies, or whether Shepparton does it as well, but it's about looking at what have you got? What are your assets? So asset-based thinking is to say, what have we actually got? And even though it looks small, that's what we've got, and affirm what we've got. So he says, we've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. He says, bring it here to me. So it starts with what we have, not what we haven't got. And then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. In detailed stepping out what happens. One of the things that happens is he sits them down the grass. Mark records that he broke the problem down because they were told to sit in groups of 50 and 100. If you're ever in a big group and someone says, a big crowd, and someone says, I want you to get together in groups, what do? sit there partly. But when you do move, you're more likely to go and sit with people you know, with family, with friends you feel comfortable with. So this 5,000 crowd, this huge crowd, suddenly becomes a number of smaller groups of family groups, friendship groups, people we know. You put a face on it. You break the problem down and you put a human face on it. And suddenly this huge problem becomes something I can relate to. If I'm sitting on some food that I've got tucked away in my pocket and it's not nearly enough for everyone, I'm more likely to share it with you than with everyone. And to put a human face on something is really important. I mean, one of the things that the World Vision did, and World Vision gets criticised for a lot of things, but they do a lot of things really right. They have put a human face on poverty and need and the need for education. It feels like I can't help everyone, but I can help this child. Now, in reality, a lot of the money you give to World Vision, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, actually goes into a lot more community work. They do actually help the whole village. So if you can get water for the village, yeah, that helps that child as well. If you can get education for the village, that helps that child as well. So we see it as we're helping someone and we can relate to it. But it puts a human face on it rather than this great big problem. I'll do what I can. I can do a little. Put a human face on things. Have compassion. And so taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, blessed and broke the loaves. This sounds almost like communion, doesn't it? Again, it's committing the whole thing to God. We know what we've got. We know what the problem is. We know what the need is. And we see these people as real people. And we have compassion for them. We commit it to God. It is in God's hand ultimately. No matter what we do and how we do it, it's God does it as well. We can't change the human heart. We can't change whatever, but we can do what we can, but we commit our small bit to God in trust. As I said, what sort of a miracle is it? Is it a miracle of multiplication? And certainly I believe Jesus could do it, but that doesn't help me. I can't do it. And so if it's multiplication, well done, and let's hope Jesus can do it again with us. But if it's a miracle of sharing, then that's a bit more close to home. I can do that. So it remains a mystery. But the miracle happens in the hands of the disciples. It is them that have to do it. Take the thing and give it to the crowds. And I have this lovely little vision of them going out and giving it to the crowds, and they sort of put words in this bloke at the front's mouth. He says, you know, you got to do something, but he says, just take a little bit. Just take a little bit. But we've got to act. It's no good having the plans and thinking it through and saying what we want to do and how we'll do it if we don't actually do something. So that seems to be the sum of it. And then we read they ate and were filled, and they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and the children. So, well, yeah, that's right. It's interesting, they're not prone to exaggeration. You'd reckon if we were doing it, we'd say there's 10,000 people here. But it's always the 5,000 we talk about. But anyway, yeah. Gather up the crumbs. Nothing is wasted. End of a big project or you've done something, it's really important to sit down and say, well, what worked, what didn't work, what can we do better next time? What's the lesson? What's the lessons learned in this? And that's what they're doing as they gather it up. Of course, I really like the idea of the 12. People say there's some symbolism about the 12. Is it 12 tribes of Israel or whatever else it is? But those 12 baskets, I like to think that there was 12 disciples, and all these disciples that didn't think there was enough, each of them's carrying a big basket of scraps around to do something, and they're really getting the message. that those five, was it 5 loaves, 2 fish? Yes, 5 loaves and 2 fish are enough, and that the mustard seed's enough, and that the yeast's enough, that a little in the hands of God goes a long way. And, I like the imagery of, carting these loads and baskets around afterwards. And you can almost hear Jesus saying, "So you sure you got it this time?" But what about us? Sometimes we're running on empty too. There isn't much in the tank. We're too tired, we have no resources, and the tasks facing us seem impossible and huge. I think we can learn a lot from that. Say we have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish, and sometimes in our relationships with others, we feel that we haven't got much to share. Family times are too scarce. Friends, we're always gathering up the scraps of time and seeing them far too little. Too little grace, too little happiness, too little satisfaction. But sometimes a little is a lot. To grab those moments with family, with friends, and relationships, to hang on to those moments of grace and forgiveness and life, to feel grateful is really important, even in small doses. So, as I say, I think it's a bit of a model for our time, for the big problems of our time. To have compassion, to see this is about people. When we hear those stories of climate change and they start showing us the Pacific Islands with the going under the water, that's putting a human face on it. It's saying there are people here. This isn't just abstract. We need to accept that it is our responsibility. Look at what we've got, not what we haven't got, what we do have. Break the problem down, put a human face on it, act, and gather up the crumbs. And if we do that, we too can participate in some of the great miracles of our time.